welcome back to another episode of The Release Valve. I am your host, Sean Hanlon, and I am back again with my right-hand man. Blood couldn't make us any closer, Kyle Spain. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you for having me back, my good sir. My right-hand man, my brother from another. What's up?
Yes, sir. Feels good. Feels good to have you back on again in such short time. There was a time period where we were we were on at least once a week, shooting for more, and then there was a time period where we would go like months without being on. So it feels good to be able to get you back on so quick, and we already know the juices are going to get flowing, so I'm excited.
Yes, sir. Let's get
it. So the main topic that we wanted to talk about tonight is, the struggles that men have dealing with their emotions, being vulnerable, opening up and talking about their feelings. Men are taught to be strong, to silently handle it, to not let others see us sweat, but what happens when you stay strong? It becomes a mask almost, right? That leads to mental shutdown, emotional shutdown,
internal destruction.
Right. The inability to recognize emotions, let alone handle them, process them properly. You know what I mean? And, men's mental health, feelings, it's not easy for us, especially in today's society, to admit when we're struggling, to admit that we have feelings, that we have feelings, two, that that it's something that we carry, throughout the day, whether it's others influencing us or having an effect on us that leads us to believe that we're not able to open up, or some people are actually taught to not open up, and some people were just never taught how to open up. One reason or the other, it's a thing. It's a problem. There's a big stigma behind men's mental health. And, obviously it's not June anymore, which is, amongst other things, Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but it's still an ongoing issue, not just during that month, you know what I mean? So we wanted to talk about that.
I think that I think the problem is worse than what people imagine, or I mean, even for my sake, it's worse than not even in what I imagine it to be. As suicide rates continue to go up, hearing about people, taking themselves, and that's the long-term effect right there, right? The people end up feeling alone, misunderstood, not cared about, unheard, not taken care of. Us as men, we need TLC as well. We need to be cared for. We need to be nurtured. Right? That's where our moms come in, but also from our significant others. As men, and the stigma behind men, and even though society has changed, women are empowered, but the responsibilities of men have stayed the same. So especially with those that go to war, and that's a different topic, but it's something that needs to be addressed. And the importance of the release valve, man, as we already know, with the tap-ins that we have, and everything that we're going through on a daily basis, the stresses, the pressures, it's important, right? And we all know that keeping things bottled up, it ends up boiling over, right? You end up exploding, and maybe it happens with the ones that you love. And then in turn, like I said, mentioning that suicide rate, mental breakdowns, internal destruction, imploding, getting to a point to where you have maybe a psychotic breakdown, right? So Man, it's super important to be talking about this right now, because it affects everything that we do and affects everyone around us. Not being able to show up as our best selves, the best version of ourselves for our kids, and for our spouses and everybody else around us, right? The energy that we're exuding, maybe isn't the friendliest, maybe isn't, the happiest, and maybe isn't the most exciting. And that's the kind of energy that we need to work towards, so everybody else around us is having a good time when they're in our presence.
100%. Especially when you have kids, right? It's so important to be as much of your best self as you can possibly be, because they're picking up on the things that they don't know how to talk about. They don't know how to address. They're not even aware half the times of the things that they're picking up, but it's just being computed into them, programmed into them to, you know, daddy's home from work. He's always in a bad mood when he gets out of work, so I can't talk to him right now.
Mm,
I can't show him the the good grade that I got on my test today because he's not going to be in a good mood. Things like that.
yeah.
Now they're not going to come out and say that, maybe depending on how old they are and how emotionally aware they are. But I feel like more often than not, they're not able to articulate what it is that they're actually picking up on and being programmed with. So that's why it's so important, because we do have a bigger understanding of the impact that we have on the way our kids develop. You know,
Yes.
so it's so easy to come up with the excuses as to why I need my alone time, why I'm in a bad mood, validating all of the negative aura that we're putting out there that other people are picking up on. And I it, I get it, because we go through things, we feel like we need that validation for it to be real. But like I said, man, especially when you have kids, it's not about you anymore, to a degree. I don't want to say
Mhm.
not about you at all. You're still living your life. It's very important for you to have an existence that matters, right? But it's not just about you.
Right.
It's There are other people that are unconsciously relying on you to show up, to be there, to be that best version of yourself. So that way you can help their development in the best way that they can develop. If we're having that negative effect, that then we're not being our best selves, that's then preventing them from being their best selves.
Mm,
And if you are just
absolutely.
living a life of that constant day in and day out, preventing somebody else from being the best version of themselves, I mean, think about the long term, the big picture of that, and how that is then going to affect the relationships they have in the future, right?
That's so good, man. I want to, like, there's so many things that I wanted to to piggyback on with that.
I get
It's
going.
not
I
right,
get
bro. It's
the
not.
juices get flowing, the wheels get
Yeah,
going.
bro. Um, it's not about you, but in on the flip side, it is about you as far as how you're carrying yourself, right? And how you're presenting yourself if you're on that journey of, the becoming the best version of you. It's like the whole plane situation. You got to put your mask on first before you put
Right.
somebody else's mask on, right? I think I believe that being in that state of mind robs you of the opportunities to be present, the opportunities to build connections, not only with yourself. I talk about relationships and how everything is a relationship, and everything, and a relationship is a connection, right? Taking that time to to figure out who you are, right? That's that connection with yourself, but then being able to connect with your kids. And I loved what you said with them not being able to be, them best selves. I should have wrote down the rest of what I wanted to write down, what I wanted to say. I got to make sure that I'm being on top of it, because when we get going, it's just like so many ideas
I
get
like what you
flowing.
said about recognizing who you are. And then to further that, who do you want to be? Because you can recognize your current state and it could be negative. Do you want to be negative?
Right.
Do you want to have a negative impact on others? I think on the outside looking in, anybody would say, no, I don't. And then they would follow that with, but I don't want to be negative, but I have these things going on, but this affected me. But you know what I mean? Like those are those excuses. Those are those, I'm trying to validate why I'm being so negative. It's not my fault. Well, it is. How you handle, like we talked about it before, life is 97% or is 3% of what happens to you and 97% of how you respond to it, how you handle it. And again, I know I've said it on here multiple times. One of my favorite quotes is, if you can't control the situation around you, control how you respond to it. And that's where your power lies. But we're choosing almost to not be powerful, to allow those exterior variables to come into our equation and have a greater impact than they deserve. If there's something negative going on around you, especially if it's somebody else, and you're allowing them that power over you to control and dictate how you then respond or react to other people, where's your power? When are you going to choose to be more powerful than that? To choose to be positive?
Yeah, bro. I think it's a lack of accountability.
Right.
And what I have noticed in these past couple of months, maybe even the past month, maybe not even that far back, I think cliche is tough. I think there's a lot of power and truth in cliche, but I think that is so diluted, it doesn't sink deep enough for us to understand the capacity in cliches. And what I mean by that is the phrase of treating people how you want to be treated. In scripture, it talks about treat your neighbor as you would treat yourself, right? Well, first we need to treat ourselves good, right? We need to love ourselves. That's first and foremost, right? But what has helped me in my personal development is that phrase, is treating people how you want to be treated. And it's such a cliche term, and it's so diluted that, like I said, the depths and understanding of that phrase may go over your head. And to give some context, I've been working on like certain text messages, right? Maybe I get a text message or something happens to me that rubs me the wrong way, right? And your first instinct is probably to get mad at that person and to respond in a negative fashion, right? But then I stopped myself, and it takes intention, right? It takes conscious awareness, right? In those moments to be like, well, if I was on the other end of this, how would I want to receive this message?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And how would I want to be taken? Like, how do I want to be treated?
Exactly. How do I want to receive this message if I was on the other end?
Right.
And that alone has completely changed my responses to almost everything. Now, I'm not a master at it yet, but having that conscious awareness has completely changed the game for me. Because it's like people, in the scripture again, it talks about how, give your enemy something to drink, give your enemy something to eat, as it will reap, heaping coals over their head. Right. And having that understanding, right, of how all of us are going through it. And that's not how all of us are going through something. And it's not easy to do. We talk about that filter system, and when somebody's
especially
being
in
negative
the heat of the moment,
right, you're going to get marked. And it's important to take a second to gather your thoughts, and like you said before, you reacting off your second thought, not your first one, right? And I
Yeah,
just
your
think that
first action should come after your second thought.
exactly. And that concept of treating people how you want to be treated, it goes long because now you're responding with more of a kind gesture, more of a positive reaction when you're thinking about how you want to receive a message and responding in that regard. It changes the game. And even like when you do it, I've noticed even the reactions that that person that I'm talking to gives. It's like, oh, they're not mad, right? Like they're not
Right.
upset, and he might be upset, but it's just like having that, again, that conscious awareness of how you want people to respond to you and executing in that fashion. It's been a complete game changer. Complete game
Right.
changer.
Yeah, a lot of people, myself included, I used to be this way. I couldn't just I couldn't just be upset. I couldn't just be mad. I had to show you that I was mad, right? You know what
Exactly.
I mean? Like I had to become this big angry, you're gonna feel how angry I am type of thing. And it's like I don't, maybe it's maturity, maybe it's experience, maybe, it could be a combination of a lot of different things. But I got to a point where it was like I like really realized it was like, oh, I'm making this worse and I'm not getting my point across because I'm being so dramatic about my anger. You're then being dramatic about your defense coming up because you're being attacked. So anybody that's being attacked is going to defend themselves, not just
Absolutely.
physically, but verbally as well.
Yeah.
So if I'm angry, becoming big angry and directing it towards you, you're going to match that energy.
Mhm.
Very rarely does somebody start getting screamed at, and the person that's getting screamed at is just very calm and it's okay. Please don't talk to me that way. Like, no, it's usually met with, don't talk to me that way, and that big anger that
Yeah,
it comes back
absolutely.
in the defensive way. So, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be hurt. Feelings are 100% legit. I've always said that feelings are a natural reaction to your level of understanding of what's happening to you, right? You feel, however, you can't control your feelings, but you can control how you respond or how you handle your feelings. I can say that pisses me off without being angry, having this mean mug on my face and raising my voice. I don't like that. I can just say that. No, thank you. I don't like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Maybe it's becoming a parent. Maybe it's becoming a father. Because I remember I was even like this when after my daughter was born. I had a job that was not the right job for me. I was under a lot of stress at work. Came back to the house because I was in a position to where I dealt with other people's problems. And when somebody knows that there's a person dedicated to dealing with problems, they'll then take problems that have nothing to do with the situation at hand, problems that they had
Mm.
outside in the world, and they'll direct that towards you because this is your job,
Yeah.
right? So you're going to feel the 20 other things that I'm frustrated about, but this one thing that came up, I'm going to unload all of that onto this thing, and you're
Yeah.
going to deal with that, right?
Yeah.
And because I was working, I couldn't respond a way that I normally would have liked to, right? I
Yeah.
couldn't tell somebody, "Don't fucking talk to me like that." You know what I mean? So I had to eat it, I had to swallow it, and then, by the time I got back to the house, I was then doing the thing that I was upset about other people doing. I was taking the things that have nothing to do with the situation at hand, and I was releasing in a negative way
Mhm.
on my family. And
Mhm.
so something would come up that I didn't like, and I would be that big angry, and I would yell, I would raise my voice, I would scream. And then it got to a point where my daughter, if something upset her, she would get big angry. she would yell, she would scream as like a 2-year-old. And it was just like an immediate, I knew right off the bat, as soon as I really heard her do it, I was like, oh shit,
Yeah.
that's on me.
It's crazy to think about.
Okay, I gotta fix this. I can't, you know what I mean? Immediate self-awareness. And, a conversation was had with my wife, and she agreed, like, yeah, yeah, that's you. She's not getting that from me. Yeah, you know what I mean? And it was like, yeah, all right, I gotta do something about this. And, yeah, man, so I had to put in intentional work, conscious work, and it wasn't easy because I had to face those things about myself, those imperfections that, it's not easy to admit that you're the one that's at fault and you're the one that has to change. You can't expect everybody else around you to change. Do as I say, not as I do type of thing. That
Mm,
doesn't work with kids, right?
it's not a thing.
It's not a thing. So I had to then remodel myself in a way that it was like, okay, this is how you're supposed to respond when you get upset. This is how you're supposed to carry yourself when you don't like something. This is how you communicate in a healthy way on what you're feeling, and others will be more receptive of that, be more empathetic towards that if you deliver it in this type of way. And I'm not going to give myself all the credit. It was work that was put in on everybody, but we're now in a place to where all of us, all four of us, are not fantastic and have it, picture perfect, but we're all so much better at coming back around, addressing our feelings, talking about our emotions, what it was that upset us and why.
That's it. Um, Emotional regulation, bro.
Right.
Going back to what you were saying about you're valid for the feelings that you are experiencing within the moment, but right after, now that is where growth is made, and being able to be consciously aware of what's happening in real time or after the fact, right? You can't really prevent an action or an action from, you can't really change how you want to respond until the action has happened, until you're in the moment, in the
Till that
fire.
next time comes back around, right?
Exactly. You can try
Yeah.
and be like, oh, well, next time I'm going to respond like this, right?
Right.
But it's not
It's
until it
always next
happens.
time and
Yeah,
next
right.
time.
But it has to be like at that moment, in the moment, or right after the moment as to where you can change it. Because yes, you are valid for feeling the way that you are feeling. But afterwards, that feeling or emotion needs to be audited, right? It needs to be like, okay, I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling discouraged. Why? What's
Right.
making me feel this way?
Right.
And then trying to establish a solution to making those changes. And even for myself, so I mean, because a lot of us we repeat Groundhog Day. We're on that same, we talk about Mario, on that same part of the level, and we keep on repeating, keep on hitting the same move over and over and over again, and wondering why we're still discouraged, frustrated, and angry with whatever it is that's going in our lives. Even for me, my routine, knowing that I need to make certain changes and not making those changes and wondering why I'm continuing to be frustrated on a daily, not a daily basis, but in certain situations. Like even today, needed to go to the gym this morning. Haven't been to the gym, in a couple of days. Ended up going after work, and it's just like, oh yeah, okay. And now I remember, how good this gym feels and how it stimulates my mind and it reaches those good feelings, that dope rush, right? We talked about the feel good feelings, right? And
Yeah.
it sets you up for the rest of your day. And so, that's the emotional regulation, is being aware of what you're feeling at that moment and being like, well, why am I feeling like this? What's going on? Because then you can address and pinpoint the issue at hand, whether that's somebody else or whether that's somebody with, in your circle with, there's that's something that you have to deal with and manage. Right. So,
Right.
Emotional regulation and auditing your thoughts and your feelings is so important, because like we talked about the other day, that negativity, man, it just really doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve any argument. It doesn't serve any. It just makes the situation that much amplified in a negative fashion. Makes it that much worse.
Right. 100%, man. So I wanted to I wanted to ask you this question because, again, bringing it back to men's mental health and the inability to address our thoughts and our feelings, our emotions. Why do you think that is? Why do you think men specifically, as a whole, uh, individuals, because there are plenty of people that aren't this way, and there are plenty of women that are this way too. But it's a big thing with a lot of men to be very guarded, and then in turn struggle to address their feelings, and then even more so actually talk about it. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a couple of things. One, let's start with environment. Our environment doesn't allow it. There's not enough safe platforms like the release valve, right? To be able to go on here and feel safe with being able to release. Like no pun intended, like I'm being really serious about like the release valve, you know what I mean? Because there aren't enough spaces just to where men can go and feel comfortable with releasing and expressing their emotions without feeling judged, right? We as men, like I said, we have a responsibility not to only to provide, right, but to be a protector, right? And being a protector requires a certain level of strength, right? And if we're crying, that's
Mm,
almost a sign of weakness. And if we're showing signs of weakness, we don't want to get taken advantage of, right?
mm,
So I think that those are the biggest reasons as to why men aren't able to express the way that they feel. Because even for me and my wife, I had to learn the hard way as far as being compassionate and being vulnerable doesn't mean you like crying. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to mean crying. It can mean, being soft, being
mm.
compassionate, being tender. Do you know what I'm saying? And I had a problem with that. I struggled with that in my relationship, and I'm learning how to be better with all of that. You know, my wife was actually trying to provide that environment. She was trying to bridge that gap and let me know that it was okay, and I still struggled with it.
Yeah.
So it's about feeling safe though, right? And on the flip side of that, somebody your significant other or your surroundings, your environment, your circle, they have to provide that environment for you to be safe, because this world is so jaded, it's so backwards that so many of us need that expression, need to let that stuff out. And yet we're in a world to where it's like, it's that, I'm all grandiose. So I'm doing well. Like I'm all do, and it's just a facade. It's that mask that we're all being tricked by when in reality, there's so many of us that are suffering on the inside. I
Right.
mean, just think about it, bro. All of us are going through something. It's in the Bible. I said it yesterday when I posted that clip about, adversity and, count it all joy, pure joy, all the trials that you will face of many kinds because of what it causes perseverance. We're all experiencing some of that. So it's not like majority of the world is living the life that we dream. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're all, and even so, you're still going to experience those hardships. And so it's just a belief, that society is better off than it actually is.
I like what you said about environment. A lot of us find ourselves by default, especially when you're becoming an adult, find ourselves in an environment where we had to be a certain way to be accepted.
Yeah.
Especially, like we talked about before, where we grew up, man, there wasn't a lot of people that were opening up and being vulnerable. You would get made fun of. You would,
Yeah.
you would lose friends You'd be
Respect.
called names. You'd lose
Yeah.
respect. So a lot of us had to build ourselves in a way that was, like you talked about the facade, and we had to act a certain way in order to be deemed cool.
Right.
And I think that a lot more people struggle with that or dealt with that than they realize or than they want to admit. Oh, something happened. So yeah, removing yourself from an environment that doesn't, you got to be honest with yourself. Is this environment giving me that safe place for me to really be my true and authentic self and not who I think that other people want me to be? Remove yourself from an environment that doesn't allow you to be vulnerable. We all need at least a moment or two here and there. There has to be a time period where we are able to talk about the things that upset us. Something is going to come along the way that bothers you. And if you don't have a safe place, a safe space to address it, it's going to build up over the years. And again, you're not even a lot of people aren't even going to be aware of the fact that it is having a negative effect, not just on themselves, but on the other people in their lives.
So important. That's so important. Oh my goodness. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to to other people around you. You can't keep, as I've been a victim of that. You can't keep your feelings to yourself without letting anybody know how you're feeling, because it doesn't give them the opportunity to make any type of changes or modifications to make you feel better if you keep that to yourself. And not only that, it builds resentment, and that resentment turns into poison and it continues to grow. And then all of a sudden there's this there's this feeling that you have that towards that person, and they don't even know that you're feeling that towards them because you didn't give them a chance to make any type of correction. If that was something, like, you got to give them the opportunity to do that if there's something that's bothering you. I mean, for all parties, it's just it's chaos and destruction waiting to happen.
No, 100%, man. Even just when you're going through something, my boy Neil said this. Shout out to Neil. He said you got to give your friends the opportunity to be there for you because it
Mm,
means something to them too. If you're just constantly there for other people, you're that person that shows up, but you don't allow others to show up for you. That's a one-way road.
mm.
You have to allow people, because it feels good to be there for somebody. If you're there for somebody and they're crying or upset about something, you guys talk it out. You hit that, pun intended, you hit that release valve, right? And then at the end of it, they say, man, I needed that. Thank you. You provided that. It feels so good to receive that thank you, even if it's not a thank you per se, right? But you know that your presence mattered to somebody else.
It's a
Allow
reflection.
others to feel that too.
Absolutely, absolutely, because it's a reflection of safety, right? It's a reflection of trust, right? If you're able to provide that for somebody else, that's just like, that makes them feel like, okay, well, this person trusts me with their feelings and their emotions, and that's honoring.
Right.
So I definitely agree with that, because at that point you want to be able to care for somebody. You want to be able to connect with somebody. You know, it not only just provides that honor, but it may help that other person on the other end connect with you with something that may be relatable to them, because ultimately that's how connections are made, right? And it's like,
Right.
I had a buddy the other day, shout out Devin Douglas. Um, I had told him about a couple of things that I was going through, and I'm like, man, I wasn't really going to tell you about this, right? And he ended up telling me about a circumstance that he was going through that was very similar to mine. And it's like, wow, right? And that's ultimately what the another important thing is about being on the release valve as well, and being able to express to other people about what you're going through, because that person may have needed you to be vulnerable, so again, so they can be like,
Right.
man, wow, I'm just going through the same
You
thing.
too?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that ultimately allows us to feel better about what they're going through, right? Now,
A
of
hundred
course, you don't want
percent.
anybody to be going through the hardships, but we can go through this hardship together now. I'm not
Right.
alone in this world as I'm going through my suffering and hardships.
That's it right there. So many of us feel alone with our feelings, our emotions, and we feel like other people wouldn't understand because they're not going through it.
Hmm.
But once you, like you said, you open up, you build that bridge, and like how we talked about this podcast, we build a bridge for others to feel safe to walk back across that bridge with us. And that's what opening up does. You open up to somebody, you're showing them that you're in a safe space. We are in a safe place that we can talk about these things. We can go over this stuff. Your feelings are safe with me, and I'm going to show you by giving you my feelings, giving you my thoughts and my emotions on something. Once you see that, once you create that place, you build that space, you build that bridge, again, that other person is then going to feel safe enough to walk across that bridge with you. And they're going to open up about the things that they have going on. And once you release that, pun intended, that's where you realize that you're not alone, that you don't have to go through these things alone, that there are other people out there that have either gone through the exact same thing, something very similar, or are just going through something different entirely. But like you said, you can do that together. You don't have to do this alone. You could be there for each other. You could be that support system, that soundboard for somebody else, and they can be that for you. And man, does it feel good
Yeah,
to not feel alone
my goodness.
in your own misery, in your own sorrow, in your own grief, in the things that make you upset, sad, angry, all of those emotions that we feel pretty much on a daily basis at some point for a lot of us, right? To not go through that alone, that's a game changer. That could literally
Man,
save somebody's life.
literally,
Literally.
literally save somebody's life. I've heard stories of it. You know, I've heard stories of it, of a simple call or thought that you're having, just reaching out to somebody when you think about them could change somebody's life. I've
Right.
heard stories where, man, this person just called, just to check on them, while they were about maybe, uh, uh, and I don't even like to bring this up, right? I mean, people don't like talking about this kind of stuff, and I think it's important. But as far as suicide, that call you can make can save somebody from taking their life. Really, that's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Saving somebody's life, man. And that loneliness, it's like it 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 really prevents someone from living their full life. When you feel alone, you feel like you don't have any purpose. When you feel alone,
Right.
you don't feel like you're unloved. It's like, well, what am I doing on this earth if
What's the point of
nobody?
it all?
Exactly, exactly. So important to be able to reach out and to be able to share care and
Mm,
love with somebody, because we all need it. We all need it, especially us men.
100%. Yeah. Everybody needs it. But I feel like those that don't receive it, don't know how to receive it, um, or deny that they need it are the ones that need it the most, right? The ones that
Exactly.
feel like, no, I'm fine. I don't need your sympathy. I don't need your pity. And it's like you're putting such a negative twist to it where it's like I'm just trying to make sure that you're okay. I'm just trying to be there for you. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with not being okay. There is something wrong with not being okay and denying that and suppressing that all of those feelings. And like you said, that's usually going to lead to some sort of a blow up, some sort of an explosion that then has an an even more negative effect on somebody else. And again, especially as fathers, husbands, having people in our lives that really need us, you know, if we're showing them that they can't come to us, that this is how you're supposed to act when you're upset about something, you shut down, you build up that wall, you don't allow anybody to get close. You're then showing them that that's what they're supposed to do in that same situation. So when they
Yeah.
have something going on, you can't be there for them now. You didn't open up to me. You didn't talk to me about these things. Why would I do that with you?
Yeah. All right. Man, was talking about energy, and that reminds me of what we were talking about as far as the energy that our kids receive and learning the whole modeling aspect of things. And you were talking about you big angry, right? And like how it just dawned on me, as to how they learn that, right? And it's how it impacts them in that moment. Like when you get big, loud, angry, like how do they feel when that happens?
Right.
Right. And that's where the learned experience comes from. This is like, how did it make them feel? Because ultimately, our actions are derived from our feelings, right? Where like what we believe in is what derives and what, drives our actions. So just exactly what you said. Well, you made me feel this way, right? The tit for tat. Like, so this is how I'm going to respond to you.
Right.
Right. And the circle, the cycle of doom, because it never gets addressed, and kids are a perfect example of that. My kids are
Right.
fighting all the time. And it's like, well, she did this to me. He did this to her. So I did it back. And so when does the cycle ever end?
Right. Right.
Right. And that goes back to that treating people how you want to be treated and being that person, right? The cliche, be the change that you want to see.
Yeah. I
Because
think
ultimately the cycle continues.
right. And you talked about this the other day, not on an episode, but just in one of our tap-ins. You were saying, the negative there seems to be a negative attachment to cliches because it's so cliche. But the reason why things are cliches because of the relevancy that they have,
Mm.
right? So be the change, you know, um, treat others the way that you want to be treated. Like, yeah, these are cliches, but they're legit.
Yeah,
And I
for
think they got
sure.
repeated so much because of how relevant they are.
Yeah,
And then people got tired of hearing it because they weren't holding themselves accountable. They weren't taking responsibility for their actions. And so it was easier to just chalk it up as, oh, that's a cliche. Roll your eyes to it, brush it off and
right,
keep
brush
moving.
it
I'm
off.
I'm going to continue acting the way that I'm acting because you said something so ridiculous to me. How cliche. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's such a
Cliche.
right. Right. Cliche is such a cliche.
Right.
Um, but again, man, being honest with your feelings, your thoughts, and allowing others to be honest with them, and not shutting it down, not shutting down your own emotions, not shutting down somebody else's emotions or feelings. Your mindset may need to be altered towards something, but your feelings are always legit. And if you're open to talk about your feelings, you're allowing other people to openly talk about their feelings. That's when the truth starts to come out. Well, I didn't really feel this way, but I felt like you weren't hearing me, so I had to add those dramatics to it. You know what I mean? But if you're able to just honestly open up and talk about how you're feeling about something, that's not usually in a big angry way. Having that conversation, allowing that communication to take place, building that safe space like we talked about, that's where you're going to get the true feelings about something. But when you feel like you're not being heard, that's when the dramatics come out, and that just makes it worse every single time.
Yeah, it's so impactful because when we get to talking about things, you really don't understand how you're feeling or the capacity of how you're feeling until you've started to release it. Like once it comes out of your mouth is when your brain starts to hear it, right? And it's like, well, because we talked about articulation, and you can't really get to the root of how you're feeling unless you start talking about it. We've done it so many times, thought provoked, right? That's what thought provoked is you get to talking about something and it was just like, oh man, I just thought of this as I was saying it,
Yeah.
right? And you can't get to that point until you've actually started talking about it. And then once you've practiced that over and over, it is when you start being able to articulate your emotions and start pinpointing as to why you're feeling this way and discovering how you discovering the emotion as to why that you're feeling that way too. But you can't do it unless you start, right? Because otherwise you're not gonna find out the root of what you're feeling until it starts coming out. It's the craziest thing
Right.
to think about. If it doesn't come out, it stays in, but you won't even figure it out. You can't even configure it. You can't even figure out what's happening until it starts coming out of your mouth.
Right. So that's why communication is so important. So it brings me to and it brings me to another question I wanted to ask you. For somebody that's out there listening that is feeling something that they don't understand, or they don't know they don't know what to do with it, they don't know how to go about handling it, what would be your advice to somebody like that?
You're gonna laugh at this and you're gonna think it's a joke, but I'm gonna say they need to get onto the release valve. They need
Right.
to get on the
I
release
was really
valve.
trying. I was like, I'm not going to laugh as soon as he said it.
And if not the release valve, and I say the release valve because not everyone has that safe environment. Not everyone has somebody to talk to about that. But another great way is, journaling. Getting your emotions and your thoughts
Mm,
out on the paper. There's something about writing, it's not an equivalent to talking, but maybe talking out loud and writing as well, getting your thoughts out onto paper so you can see what's going on, right?
mm,
And having that journal, I haven't been journaling as much, but that's another way to kind of just see what's going on to see what's going on paper, reading it back. And because once you read it back, now you're consuming it from the outside in versus it being from the inside out. And now you're able to
right.
identify again like what was being said, how you're feeling, and you're able to analyze it, right? You're able to audit those feelings and kind of figure out what's going on. But it takes now that doesn't substitute, being able to talk to somebody else and having that soundboard, because I believe that that feedback is important as well. Now, you
Yeah.
got to be careful with who you're talking to as well. Everyone,
Mm,
hurt people, right? So if you're talking to somebody who's hurt and they're not really have your best interest at heart, they could be steering you in the wrong direction. And that's why it's also important to get onto the release valve, because not everybody's going to give you the right information based off their experiences, their pain, their hardships and sufferings, because they're going to give you their opinion, right? They're not
yeah.
going to be biased all the time. And that's another reason why it's hard for people to express themselves as well, because you got to be careful. You really do. Even for me, I get to talking to certain people and they get to saying certain things, and it's thought provoked, right? Every word provokes a thought and a thought cycle, and it establishes an image in your head, and then you start playing scenarios with whatever they said, right?
Mm,
So it's dangerous, and our thoughts, as we already know, create our reality. We get to playing those stories and movies in our head, and that's where the enemy lies, right? That's where the enemy lies,
yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
Seriously, right? Because you start coming up with these ideas, these outcomes that haven't even existed yet, and it affects our body emotionally, right? And so yeah, man. Being able to find an environment to where you can feel safe and talk to somebody about about that is the most important. Having that friend, that soundboard that's got your back. And it's not always easy because everyone's going through something, right? So
Right. I had to write some of that down because I didn't want to lose my train of thought. I couldn't agree more. I think a great way to start is definitely if you feel like you don't have somebody that you can open up to, or you don't know how to approach somebody and open up to them, start by writing it down. Release those thoughts and give life to it. Sometimes, and yeah, reading it out loud, sometimes you can hear something and it doesn't sound the same as it did inside your head.
exactly.
Sometimes you can kind of regulate yourself and filter through, like, oh, I don't like that, that's not legit, or okay, like, yeah, like that does make sense to me. I do think, like you said, it's extremely important to have somebody to actually talk to that's not going to have a built-in bias, whether it's for you or against you. You can talk to people. I think having good friends that are there for you is so important, but it can be unhealthy at the same time. If you have a yes man or a you go girl, no matter what,
Yeah.
like, no matter how wrong you are, they're going to back you. I think that's unhealthy.
Oh, extremely.
I think it's more healthy to have somebody that you're going to you may take this the wrong way, you may take this to heart. This may end our friendship, but I think you're wrong. I think you're doing too much. I think you shouldn't have said that. I don't think you should have acted that way. You shouldn't have punched him, or whatever, or her, or
Right.
whatever the case is. No, validating those things, like, oh, it doesn't matter, again, you go girl, you did the right thing, who cares what he said or what he did, it doesn't matter. You act however you want, or vice versa. Yeah, man, you're the man, like, who cares? Don't be a bitch, stuff like that. Like, nah, that's not healthy. You need somebody that's going to keep it real with you and not have that built-in bias, that can say, nah, I don't think you should have said that, or whatever, fill in the blank. Having the right soundboard.
Yes.
Again, feelings are never wrong, but sometimes it's our mindsets that need to be adjusted a little bit. And when you're only talking to yourself and having internal dialogue, or you're only talking to somebody that is going to validate your bad decisions, your bad actions, because they're always going to be on your side no matter what, you're then not getting a legitimate and real feedback on how to conduct yourself as a human being, how to conduct yourself as a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a husband, a wife, a friend. Like, you can't excuse bad behavior simply because you're friends with the person or you're on their side.
It's a victim mindset.
It is a victim
It's
mindset.
a victim mindset because if you don't ever correct your wrongs are going to carry into the next relationship. Those same habits are going to carry into the next situation. And it's going to keep on repeating that same cycle. And you're going to continue to blame the other person for the same thing that's happening into your life, right? So there's no
Right. It's
growth
always
being
going to be
made.
somebody else's fault.
Right.
I was there.
Exactly.
I can only say and talk about these things because I was there. I used to be a shitty person because I could validate the reasons why I did what I did or said what I said. Yeah, I did this, but you did
But
that.
you did.
You know what I mean? And that just
Yeah,
when does
bro.
that end? That's what I call the deflect and stab. You
Yeah.
have your shield, you deflect what's coming at you, no matter how right it is, you're deflecting it, and then you're returning with a stab. It's there's no room for growth there. You're
Yeah.
always going to be that person and in turn, you're always going to have that victim mindset to where you feel like you're always being attacked.
Yeah.
Well, it's because you're always doing something wrong, because you're not willing to take accountability for yourself and your actions.
Absolutely.
Yes, this happened to me, but I shouldn't have responded that way. Again, bringing it back to what we talked about earlier, identifying who you are and then identify who you want to be. Do you want to be the person that is being negative towards other people simply because you had a reason to? Or do you want to be the person that is having a positive influence on others regardless of what happens to you?
That's
I think most people would choose that they would rather be a positive person, that they would rather do good things instead of just being this bitter, resentful, angry person all the time that's constantly having these things happen to them. Stop being a victim.
it's a practice. It's a practice, man. Um, Self personal development is it requires conscious awareness, step by step, identifying those things that need to change in your life, and it's not easy. It's not easy because we're all going through similar situations or and being attacked in that type of fashion to where it's easy to fall into that victim mindset. But it's about being able to identify those situations so we can actively change them. But if you're not on a journey of personal development, growth, if you've always got the victim mindset, and if you're always, you know, in that realm of thinking, you'll always stay stuck. You'll always stay where you are, and
Right.
growth can never happen if you're not taking accountability. Ultimately, that is what requires the first and foremost awareness and accountability is the key factors in the foundation of personal development and growth. So
That's it,
without it,
man.
there's you don't you you're stuck.
You're just not developing.
Right.
And
You're not getting better. You're getting worse.
if you're a parent, if you're a mother or a father and you're refusing to develop and grow, you're then modeling that for your children.
Yeah.
And they're not going to learn how to develop and grow properly either.
Absolutely.
And when they get into situations in the real world, they're not going to know how to handle it. And they're just going to default back to what they were shown as children.
Yeah.
And if you're an adult reacting in childlike ways because that's all you've ever known, you're never going to have a real relationship with anybody
Right.
other than, your father or your mother or, whoever. And what kind of life is that
Right.
that you want to? So I don't know. Real strength isn't never feeling anything, never admitting that you have feelings or you're hurt or whatever. It's having the courage to
Mm.
feel it and say it out loud. Let it be known and do something about it.
Oh man, before we get off, I love that. That is big. Being able to feel it, but not just feel it, say it out loud, even if it's not to somebody else, because it's admitting that what you're feeling. Like that, it is so big. That's helped me a lot, in my journey of personal development. It's like, yeah, I'm feeling this way, right? Because that's almost the first step is identifying, being real, not
Right.
denying it, right? Not coming up with excuses in your head and blaming whatever reason or whoever it is that you're feeling why you're feeling that way, but it's being real with yourself. It's like, yes, I'm feeling this way, and then at that point you can figure out why and you can move on to the next step. I think
Right.
that's
You
big.
gotta reverse engineer it. You have
Exactly.
your product, you go backwards with it. I'm upset, like you said. Give it a name. Jay Shetty talked about that. Give it a name. I'm upset. Why am I upset? Well, I'm upset because of this. Why am I upset because of that? Okay. Now that I have all that identified, what can I do about it?
Hmm.
How can I address this situation? Let that person know. This person upset me. Hey, you upset me and it made me feel this way. I wanted to let you know that I didn't appreciate that or I didn't like that. Depending on who you're dealing with, they're either going to respond accordingly, maybe apologize, maybe let you know where they were coming from and why they acted that way, and then you can have that communication piece and figure those type of things out. I didn't realize that you felt that way off of what I said. I apologize. That wasn't my intention. I was upset about this. Okay, well, I wanted to let you know that because you were upset, you handled it this way and this is how it made me feel. And then you have a beautiful communication and a better understanding of the effect that you have on other people and maybe figure out different ways that you can go about it. But if you're not having that type of communication, that type of dialogue with somebody else other than yourself, and you get upset because of how somebody treated you, and so you just give them the cold shoulder, and now they don't realize that they upset you, but they see that you're upset and how you're treating them. So now they're going to respond in a negative way. And it's just this ugly back and forth, and
The
nobody's
tit
getting
for
anywhere.
tat, right?
Nothing's getting accomplished here. And again, there's no growth. So identify it, talk about it, open up, say it. And if you're dealing with somebody that still shuts it down, maybe that's not somebody that you want to be dealing with. You know, maybe
Yeah.
that's somebody that you need to kind of weed out of your life, or teach them, show them a better way. You know, maybe it's somebody that doesn't know how to go about those type of things. So identify it, address it, talk about it. If you can't find anybody to talk to about these type of things, you can talk to Kyle, you can talk to me, hit us up. Like Kyle said, you can come on the Release Valve. We don't even need to do an episode for you to reach out to me and we can talk about these type of things. These are the
Mm.
type of services that you and I are going to be providing for other people. We're going to be putting ourselves out there for those to reach out to us and have these type of conversations. Again, it doesn't have to be an episode. It could just be a conversation. We can start to figure these type of things out together. You don't have to be alone through this journey. And that's what I think is a big thing. And I'm glad that you said that people need to come onto the Release Valve. It's not just a podcast. It's a movement. It's a way, it's a coping mechanism to deal with the things that we have going on in our lives. You need to hit your release valve. You need to talk about it. You need to address it. And you need to have that type of conversation with somebody that's not going to judge you, that's going to give you honest and unbiased feedback and be there for you to try to help you get through it.
It's a part of being a student of the game. You know,
Hey,
it's about learning how to deal with your feelings. It's about learning. I mean, it's just the student of the game we've talked about before. It's about being a student of life, and without that aspect of your life of being able to hit the release valve, it prevents your growth because the revealing is healing. You know, so you got to share what you're feeling.
that's it.
A little bit of a rhyme there.
Hey, why not? Why not? Sounds good. All right. Oh man, I appreciate you, brother. These conversations, they're so important, and I feel truly grateful that I have somebody that I can come on here and talk about these type of things with, especially another male. You know, there's not too
Yeah.
many of us out there that are talking this way, so I appreciate you, brother. And as always, I appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll see you next time.